Chapter 12, Part 1. Token awoke to the deep whoop of something heavy repeatedly passing through the air. It reminded him of the sound effects used in old kung fu movies whenever someone jumped or performed a somersault. Groggily, he peered over his covers to find the source of the sound, and winced as the first rays of cold morning light pierced his bleary eyes. His sleep-drunk vision spied a milk-white figure standing beside the bunk bed. A few blinks, and the figure resolved itself into his new friend, Vivian. The boy stood in his drawers, holding his baseball bat, capped down, by his ankles like a golfer. "I think you be playing the wrong game," Token groaned, shielding his eyes from the window. Vivian chuckled and turned around so that Token saw the faint bumps of muscle across his shoulders and down his arms. The 12-year-old looked stripped like a broad bean. "No room in here for normal swinging," he panted. 20 every day before breakfast without fail." Token rubbed the last sleep from his eyes. "Yeah, well, breakfast in here be the failure of May every day." He climbed down off his bunk and hissed as his bare feet touched the wooden floor. The boards felt as cold as an ice rink. "Yeah, the floor is freezing," Vivian grinned. He pointed with the bat to the curled pipes of the radiator below the windowsill. "I don't think any heat comes out of that thing at all." "The boiler probably be broken down again." Token scowled and gave the pipes a half-hearted kick. "Just like the elevator, just like everything else in this place. Did you hear it last night?" "You mean all the thumping and banging and shaking?" Vivian raised an eyebrow. "I felt that more than heard it. I'm surprised the whole building didn't come down. You trying to tell me that was a boiler?" "It happened every now and then," Token smiled. "Welcome to Murkwater." Vivian smirked and took another couple of swings with his bat. He made it look easy, but Token heard the grunt of effort and saw how the muscles pulled tight with each swing. "Don't you ever let go of that thing?" he ventured. "Not while I'm strong enough to use it," Vivian huffed. He then turned and held out the bat in both hands. "Bet anything for a friend?" Token eyed the bat. He had no experience with baseball bats, and had only ever seen them in the windows of sports stores or on TV. The school that he had gone to, when he had gone at all, had played t-ball for phys ed. It was a game similar to baseball, he supposed, but instead of using a pitcher, you hit an oversized ball off a post. A swing and miss pretty much guaranteed you the title of retard for the day, and could only be rescinded by a home run. The bats they used were these dented aluminium clubs with frayed handle straps. They were only used during the games and were locked away after class so the kids couldn't use them on each other. The one Vivian was holding out to him now seemed larger than those, although he couldn't be sure. The new boy was still breathing hard, his pale skin slick with sweat. Token took this as a sign that the bat was probably heavy, and Vivian's secretive grin told him to expect heavier, but expecting wasn't enough. Token nearly dropped the bat the minute it was in his hands. He stared down at its dark honey-coloured grain in disbelief. The bat felt like it was made of iron. Vivian must have seen the surprise on his face because his grin grew even wider. "Solid hickory," he said proudly. "Give it a swing, but be careful not to pull something." The seed of doubt planted inside Token by the bat's initial weight now sprouted into a small tree. He lowered the barrel of the bat down to the floor and gave some small tentative tugs to the right and left, feeling his wrists creak like old hinges under the effort. The barrel swung back and forth lazily like a pendulum. Token squared his shoulders, tightened his stomach, prepared to twist to the waist, and it was at that moment that the tree inside of him broke into blossom. He felt his body relax, and shame welled up inside of him. "I think this thing would be twisting me around backwards," he said, feeling embarrassed. Vivian's grin became good-natured. "You'd be right." Token rolled the handle in his hands, and the light from the window played across the bat's glossed surface. It highlighted a scrawl of black letters, a word. No, not just a word. A name. A name that seemed to say everything that the bat was and what it was about. Breaker. Curious, Token looked from the name to Vivian, and the boy answered as if reading his mind. "Broke the first ball it ever hit," he said proudly. "An old cricket ball. Broke it and sent the bits spinning into the atmosphere." "You did that?" "Not me," Vivian laughed. "My dad did it. It was his bat." He broke off and suddenly looked miserable. "I guess it's mine now, though." Token moved forward and held the bat out to its owner with both hands. He figured there would come a time when he would tell his friend that he was lucky enough to have a relationship with his father, even if it was cut short. Now was not the time, however. Vivian looked like he was accepting a report card as he plucked the bat out of Token's hands in one fist. Token clapped him on the shoulder. "Let's put it down for now, huh? Don't want to be late for work." Part 2. They pulled on the clothes they'd worn the day before, a long-sleeved tank top, cargo pants and army boots for Token, and the same ripped Levi's, vintage trainers and Iron Maiden Run to the Hills t-shirt for Vivian. Vivian then unzipped his duffel bag and took out the tradable items he thought he might need to make a good impression on his first full day. Token peeked over his shoulder and whistled in approval. A chocolate bar, a pack of gum, and 2 packets of popping candy specially for the ladies. His frown lightened a little. You a rich man, Cobweb. Any more where that came from? Some, Vivian said cautiously. Mars bar for your silence? Token's shrug was nonchalant, but Vivian could see the almost predatory gleam in his eye as the dark boy stared at the candy in his hand. You twisted my arm there, Cobweb, but it's a deal. Vivian tossed the candy bar to Token, then remembering something that Lewis had said the day before, repeated, Cup full of vinegar if you tell a lie. Token caught the Mars bar in his hand and saluted Vivian with it. Brown vinegar, he grinned. You catch on fast. The rest might get me out of a chore or two, Vivian mused, taking another Mars bar out of his bag. That'll buy me some info about this forest green, since you won't tell me anything else. He added the last part with a glimmer of hope, but Token didn't rise to the bait. The dark boy ran his nose along the length of the wrapper, inhaled deeply and closed his eyes in ecstasy. Do you know how long it's been since I stole me one of these? Vivian smiled as he wrapped the rest of his tradable stash up in one of his t-shirts and zipped up his bag. When he looked back, he did a double take. The Mars bar was still in Token's palm, and still in its wrapper, but the chocolate bar was now in 2 neat halves. Vivian expected to see a stretched tongue of caramel or crumbled chocolate sprinkled across the boy's palm, evidence that he had broken the bar in 2, but there was none. How did you... he began, but fell into laughing as Token pocketed one half, barely taking the time to remove the wrapper, then stuffed the other one into his gob. With his eyes rolled back and his jaws working mechanically, Token reminded Vivian of a dog chewing a bone. Still giggling, Vivian rolled Breaker under his bed and stuffed the other candy items into his pockets. He lifted up his pillow and looked at his phone, considering whether or not to take it along. Lending that up would be a more valuable trade than any sweet treat among this crowd, Token said over his shoulder. Some kids in here, they'd be forking out some hair or even a tooth for an hour's lend. He gave a shrug. Of course, they get caught with it, you lose it for good. Teeth and hair. Vivian shook his head, remembering the girl's chocolate-coloured locks slipping out of the envelope and falling to the floor. He lowered his pillow back down to the floor. What good are they? In here? Token sounded serious. More than you know.